Crime and Punishment. My God, this book is amazing. I'm not even done with it. I'm about to be halfway through. I just finished part one and part two, and I figured that I'll talk to you guys about it. Where do I start? Part one was just amazing, breathtaking, adrenaline pumping. It introduced quite a few characters, and one of them ended up being my favorite. He goes by the name of Hazumi Kim. Hazumi Kim, I don't really know how to pronounce it, so I'm going to put his name right here. He became my favorite character. That was in part one. We barely got to know him, but I liked him more in part two. Part two of the book is my favorite so far. Part two, okay, part two is delirium laced with pain, agony, suffering, laughter, emphasis on the pain, agony, suffering. I mean, in part one, we were introduced to an ex civil servant, right? That the main character met at a pub. This is in part one. Remember, this is actually a key information. He started to talk about his family. He has a wife, 3 kids, loves them very much. But from how we're reading him right now and how the narrator is describing him, it seems just like he has given up. It's a bit infuriating at the beginning because when I read it, I was enraged, I admit. He had a wife and kid at home. He stole the money that he gave to his wife just to go at a pub, drink, right, and sold the clothes that his wife worked so hard on. I was personally infuriated because who does that, right? You have a family to take care of them. But as the story goes on, we get to learn more and more. I'm not going to spoil you in case you plan on reading this, but it turns out that the husband, Mormalitov, that's his name. I butchered that name too, I'm pretty sure. Turns out that the husband isn't such a bad person. I'm going to leave it at that. But still, in part one, quite a few people die. 2 people, actually. One of them, in my opinion, did not deserve to die. I'm still shocked and a little bit sad that they died because they had nothing to do with it. They were simply an unfortunate soul, an unfortunate place and time. And out of pure adrenaline, and because he wanted to probably have no witness, Raskolnikov, that's the name of the main character, decide to just kill her. Yeah. And I want you guys to listen to this part. Pay close attention because this is how she dies, and I don't think that it's a dignified way to die, if that makes sense. It goes something along the lines of, moreover, this unhappy Lizaveta, that's her name, was so simple, downtrodden, and utterly intimidated that she did not even raise her hands to protect herself. Even though this would have been a most natural, life-saving gesture for her to make at that moment. As the axe was raised right above her face, she merely raised her unengaged left arm the tiniest distance a long way from her face, and slowly extended it towards the axe as though in an attempt to ward it off. The blow landed right on her skull, blade first, and instantly split open the whole upper part of her forehead. almost to the crown of her head. She fairly crashed to the floor. That is how she died. If you're wondering why exactly she didn't defend herself, it's because she had just seen her sister being bashed in the head, right? Blood just on the floor, eyes popping out of the head. Yes, it's very gruesome. That's how it is described in the book. She was in shock. Imagine you walk in your room, right? You have your sibling that you love very much. You walk in there, you just see them dead, absolutely demolished. You're going to be shocked. You're going to be stunned for a few seconds. And the next thing you know, there's a man that comes out of the corner and just right on the skull. And you just die just like that. She didn't deserve to die. I feel sad about it. I know I'm repeating and I sound like a broken record, but in my opinion, after Raskolnikov had committed a murder, just take the money and leave, okay? Leave. He, in fact, did not take the money. Would you believe that? Right, his hand was trembling as he was rummaging through her stuff. He didn't take the money. He took like a purse and a couple of earrings, literally hid from everyone in the building, and escaped because he almost got caught. He almost did, which was kind of shocking. Because from the way he described it, he had planned everything out. Such a shame, honestly, that she had to die. And towards the very end of part 1, Raskolnikov just goes home in his apartment and he still has the axe on him. Would you believe that? He goes to his apartment, right? He's standing. He still has the axe in his coat. But as a smart ex-student that he is, he thinks of way to get rid of the evidence. That could be, he thought about throwing it in the canal, burying it, or just putting it back in place. He went with the third option of putting it back in place, which was really risky because that wasn't even his, by the way. The axe that he stole, the axe wasn't his. He stole it from the yardskeeper and he went to return it after washing off all the blood, of course. After doing that, he just went home and plopped on his bed and passed out, literally went unconscious. He was literally in and out of consciousness, as the narrator mentions it. And that pretty much summarizes the end of part 1. Part 2 is where the good stuff began. I mean, it starts with Raskolnikov, our protagonist, in bed, still sleeping in and out of consciousness. The maid, at least I believe she's the maid, that's what I've been thinking of her as, comes up to his room, knocks on the door, and no answer. So she enters and notices that Raskolnikov hasn't moved since he came back from the murder. She doesn't know that he killed someone. She doesn't. She just thinks that something is unwell with him, and Raskolnikov, barely awake, tells her that it's just a fever. Nastasha, that's the name of the maid, gives him a letter that he has been summoned to the court, right? The police station, I guess I should say. And I'm telling you, I was shocked because in part 1, as I said, like, he escaped, right? But there were people, so he was hiding. I assumed that someone had seen him. But no, turns out that he got invited to the police station. He got not invited, he was in order to go to the police station. because he hadn't paid rent in 3 months. Well, I'm telling you, I chuckled out loud when that part came. No exaggeration. I chuckled because I thought he had been caught and that the rest of the book would just be everything just going downhill from there. But no, he hadn't been caught yet. And at the end of part two, he still hasn't been caught. So he goes to the police station, right? There, after filling out some paper, and remember, he's been going in and out of consciousness. He isn't feeling well. He ends up passing out at the police station. Yeah. And people start to question him, asking him, how long have you been sick? He said, yesterday, I think. Right. But then again, another one asked him, so you've been, and asked him, have you gone out yesterday? He said, yes. What time? He said, 8 p.m. And remember, the murder happened at 7 something. And remember, the murder happened at 8 yesterday. So they're becoming suspicious of him, but they're not really saying anything. So he just goes home. And guess what? He passes out on the sofa. And that's when my favorite character, Hazumi Kim, swooshes in, brings in a doctor, asks him to check him out. And while the doctor was checking out Raskolnikov, the man started talking about the evidence from the coat that had the axe, the socks that had the blood, and from his trousers that had blood on it. He just kept talking. The man was like, he's unconscious, remember. His entire being was telling everything that happened. Thankfully, he didn't say out loud that he killed her. He's just asking him to give it to him. The trousers, the sock, and checking the jacket too. He ends up being given the sock by the doctor, and he is grasping it in his sleep. I mean, like, why can't I use an example? He is squeezing that thing. And where was I? I'm getting way too much into the explanation of this book. But after grasping the sock, right, he pretty much came to. But he wasn't fully aware, when like a sibling comes in your room at like 3 a.m. and start talking to you, you're barely awake, you can really see well, you can really understand what they're saying. Imagine that situation, right? So he was just there coming to. He was saying 2 people, actually 3, the maid, Nastasha, Hazumi Kim, and the doctor. The reason I call him the doctor is because he has a similar name to a police officer. It starts with a Z. I think it's Zamian, something like that. I'm sorry, okay? You can't really kill me or hate me for not being able to remember a plethora of names, please. But after he came to, the doctor left before he fully was aware and awake. So it was only Hazumi Kim and the maid. Hazumi Kim started talking to him as a good friend that he is, cracking jokes here and there. And he let it slip that he's coming over and that he moved to the same apartment building as him. They're friends, but not good friends. Okay, I'm about to skip a bunch of things because I don't want this video to be really long. But fast forward towards the very end of part 2, the last 2 chapters, I think it was chapter 6 and 7. Remember in part 1 I mentioned a man, right, that was drunk, using the money that he took from his wife and selling his clothes, right? Raskolnikov ends up meeting that gentleman. Yes, he deserved the title of gentleman. He ends up meeting that gentleman again, but this time in such a worse situation. I mean, he had been run over by a horse. His chest, where his heart is, I think it's the upper left quadrant, or right, had literally been stomped on by a horse. This is your heart. The horse hoof just like that. He wasn't dead, but there was a bunch of blood. Right? His head has also been stomped on. So after Raskolnikov notices that the man, the ex-civil servant, name is Marmelatov, is on the floor, bleeding, about to die, he carries him and brings him to the apartment where his wife and kids are. And I want you guys to just listen, because this part I got really sad when I was reading this, and I highlighted it. You can't exactly see, but yeah. Because this is a little girl talking. Just listen. "Do you love your sister, Sonia?" said Raskolnikov. "I love her more than anyone else," Polenka said with peculiar firmness. That's the name of the daughter of Marmelatov. Polenka. And her smile suddenly became more serious. "And will you love me too?" In lieu of a reply, he saw the little girl's face, with its boring lips naively extended in order to give him a kiss. Suddenly, her matchstick's thin arm seized him in the tightest of embraces, her head inclined towards his shoulder, and the little girl began to quietly weep, pressing her face harder and harder against him. "I want my papa," she said a moment later, raising that face, now stained with tears, which she wiped away with her hands. Keep in mind, she had to see her father die. Right, because he brought it to the apartment. He called the priest and the doctor. The father, the dying man, gave his confession and died while hugging his daughter, which was just imagine the pain. Oh my God. Imagine what is going on at that moment. Right? Imagine you in that situation. Your father or your mother, someone that you love dearly, right, comes home in a bloody mess carried by a random man. Where once noticing you, he calls for you, gives you a hug, and dies while giving you a hug. My God, that has to, oh Lord, I don't want to be in that situation. That would be too much pain for a little child. Literally, I think he hugged the oldest. He was 8. She died. I mean, not she died. He died. I will die inside. Seriously. If my father gave me a hug and died, I would die inside. A part of me would be gone with him. And remember how I said that he isn't a bad person at part 1? Listen. And did your papa love you? Of us all, he loved the Dakha the best. She went on very earnestly, without smiling, this time speaking exactly in the way grown-ups do. He loved her because she's little, and also because she's ill. He was always bringing her sweets, and as for us, he taught us to read, and he taught me grammar and Holy Scripture. She added with dignity, and Mama never said anything, but we all knew she liked that, and Papa knew it too. And Mama wants to teach me French because it's time I was getting some education. Even though he was drunk and spending time at the bar, or drinking den as it's called, he took care of the family. That's why my view of him changed. because the narrator didn't mention it at the beginning, but towards the end, we get to learn that he actually took care of the family, and that just like Arthur Morgan, he's not all bad. And I'm gonna skip out a bunch of stuff, but this is the most important part in part two, in my opinion. Oh, right, I forgot to mention before I finish. He confesses to killing in a joking manner. He did. His sister came to visit him. He didn't confess to his sister, he confessed to an acquaintance at the drinking den. But nevertheless, now they're becoming suspicious of him. The doctor that examined him and that one acquaintance at the drinking den, they're becoming suspicious. But I'm gonna leave it as that because I don't want this video to be too long. I think this time, none of you are probably listening right now, but if you are, thank you for listening. My name is Ivan. This was part 1 and part 2 of Crime and Punishment from my perspective. And I hope you enjoy. If you have anything to say, leave it down in the comments. And I'll see you guys next time. As always, have a good day and be good people. Bye.